Good evening, everyone. In the essence of respective time, we're going to get started this evening. Uh, we'll go over some dates, but this will not be our last meeting discussing this topic. Go ahead, Mr. Kaufman. And everyone, the agenda and the presentation are in the chat if you need it. Thank you so much.
Sure. So agenda tonight, we're going to look at the proposed budget summary with the budget scenarios, the state budget updates, our WPEA contract timeline, tax revenue anticipation note timeline, and our budget approval timeline.
So many timelines.
Yes, we're running out of time, so we got to get there.
The timelines. I'm sorry.
So the 24-25 proposed budget summary, we're required to have a balanced budget. So the scenarios, we will start with the worst case scenario, which we are in at the moment. Sorry, this should say 0 with. So if we get a 0% increase of state funding and 0% tax increase, this is the newest scenario that we included since we do not have a past budget. The only thing we would include is our contractual wage increases that we are working on with our employee groups. Everything else will be excluded, and that would also include basically cutting everything that we can think of. Again, it's not really a great reduction or a great plan, but it's what we would have to do, and we would still have a $600,000 hole. So it's not really feasible. They would basically eat our entire fund balance and would not actually become a balanced budget. So the next scenario. Sorry, do you have a question?
Yeah, I'm sorry. How much is in our fund balance?
It was, I believe, 525 at the beginning of the year. We still have to project out the end of the year. There's tax revenue still coming in and payroll over the summer. So we anticipate flat, but we have to double check depending on tax revenues if they come in higher or lower.
So, Mr. Kaufman, you said using our fund balance, we still would have a gap of how much?
Well, I don't believe we have enough fund balance to achieve that gap. So our gap would be 590,000, and I'm not sure that we would have 590,000.
And that's that. So that is for everyone on line 107. And this is our contractual. What is this?
That's only includes our contractual increases, and down here it says necessary but not yet contracted. These are our contracted increases for the teachers. So although
I'm sorry, what number?
Line 70. So it's the only increases are the things that we've already signed contracts for and the upcoming approval of the contract for the teachers or extension on line 70. Everything else is excluding, and it's also finding additional things to cut down on in order to try and get down to a balanced budget, and we still can't get there at this moment.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Can you look at the 3%, Mr. Kaufman?
Sure. So similar scenario, except here you see a 3% increase in the tax. Still have to cut a lot of items and exclude most things, but it gets us to a very near, but for all intents and purposes, that's balanced. 922 difference is just using round figures. So in that scenario, we have an ability to get to balanced, but again, it's cutting and excluding everything possible.
So you're saying that 3% tax increase would get us there with the cuts that are proposed?
That is correct. So on to 25% state funding without a tax increase. As you can see here, 0% tax increase. Again, this is pretty much cutting everything. However, we are able to include some items, but not very much. So that's only if revenue's coming at 25%, but it's also a little bit of a reduction in the cut as well. So state funding with a 1.5% increase. Get to include about, I think, one more item in this area, and the cuts are a little less. Again, there's 62,000 there, but it would be allocated. Like these are using round figures, so. With a 25% state revenue with a 3% tax increase, again, we get to include some different items, cut a lot less. And here you see the 3%. So, you know, as we continue on through an increase in the state funding, you'll see an increase in inclusion of items that we think are necessary and a reduction of the number of cuts. But when it really comes down to it, if there's a 0% state funding, without a tax increase, we can't make it with 3%. We'd have to cut everything, but we might be able to get through. Any questions, or do you want me to continue going on up through the scenarios at this point? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry. No, you don't have to go through the scenarios. Does anyone have any questions? I mean, you know, you all have heard this from me before, but my business manager should not have to have a spread.
Oh, you're muted again.
Let's go. Hey, sorry. You know, you all have heard this from me before, but my business manager should not have to have, our business manager should not have to have a spreadsheet with scenarios 15 days before we're due to pass a budget. This is unfair to our citizens. This is unfair to our school board directors. This is just awful. So here we are. Anybody have any questions? Sorry to be a Debbie Downer today. All right, proceed ahead.
Okay, continuing on, state budget update. So you may have heard on June 10th, Pennsylvania House of Representatives passed House Bill 2370, which essentially agreed with a lot, if not all, of the governor's proposed budget for education. However, we anticipate that it will be difficult to get through the state Senate. We're hopeful, but again, we haven't heard any news that it's going to happen. And if it's going to happen, it may not happen before June 30th. So we will still be in the dark. For our WPEA contract timeline, we met with our team, our negotiation team today. We're going to present our offer to WPEA tomorrow, and we will tentatively meet with them next Thursday, hopefully to lock in that number that is still in the non-contracted area as of today. Tax revenue anticipation note. So the timeline for that is we will send out an RFP on June 24th, receive responses by July 25th, approve the tax revenue anticipation note resolution on the July 22nd board meeting, and then settlement on July 31st. And again, this is a result of, you know, not having a budget and not knowing whether we're going to get state revenues in time to meet payroll and things like that for next year's expenses in a stalled budget scenario. So the budget timeline for the remainder of the year. On June 17th, we have to advertise the final budget adoption. So that requires us to put a number in the paper, I believe. We will have another budget advisory committee meeting on June 20th. Then we'll have our board meeting on June 27th to adopt the final budget. And by June 12th, I have to submit our adopted budget through the state system. And all of our meetings will be at 6:30 for the remainder of the year. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Hoff to see if there's any questions or anything.
Thank you. When do we have to send it out to the bill provider? Like, so
So in
Last year-
order,
we had a problem with, they did it like 2 or 3 weeks late. And it was too late for us to change our bills. And then they said we couldn't reopen the budget. Then they said we could reopen the budget. What is it?
sure. So in order to have the bills printed by July 1st, I would have to submit the millage rate by tomorrow. After that date, we basically go into a queue where first come, first serve gets printed at that, and they can't guarantee the date, but they can give me a 2-week or a 7-day window in which they would be mailed out.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I'm wondering about that tax revenue anticipation notes. Do you guys have like a ballpark number that you're thinking about borrowing to fill that gap?
Sure, it's approximately $6 million, which would cover 3 payrolls for the district.
Three payrolls. So what is that? All of July, August?
Mhm.
What's the interest rate on that now? Or
I don't currently know, since we haven't had a response. Like I know our effective bond rate is down at, I believe, like 2%, but that's a really good bond rating, or not bond rating, but a good time for bonds. But for the Tran, I'm not sure at this time.
And when will we have that back? Sorry. The Tran results?
So on July 15th, so I would assume either at the end of the day on the 15th, we would know what our situation would be, or if not, at the latest on July 16th.
Is that in time enough? Right? Were those for July payrolls or August payrolls?
They're for August.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Committee members, I wish we had better news, but we don't. It's sort of our reality. And I'll be reaching out to school board directors to approve a 3% tax increase, because we have no other option. If we do not know what the state is giving us, we have to assume level at best. Anybody have any questions?
So, Jennifer, just a comment.
Yep.
It's not about the state. There's not money there. The state is sitting on billions of dollars, right?
Billions.
Billions of dollars. So is this more or less like they don't want to cross the aisles like along party lines to, allocate the funds for basic education and special ed and all that?
So I think it's that, but it's also, they don't really have a hard deadline, right? If they don't pass a budget, nothing happens, right? They get their paychecks, everything keeps running.
Yeah.
And it's different for us, right? We by law have to do it, and we don't get a paycheck to begin with. So it's just, it is a little bit, well, I don't like you, I don't agree with you, so let's be committed to not working it out, right? When we have to work it out. So they're afforded certain things that we're not.
And I mean,
They don't have to be committed to it because they can go home. Like, it's not like years ago you would stay until you got a budget. Like,
Yeah.
you don't go home. You don't go on vacation for 4th of July. You don't go on vacation if it's something into Labor Day. You stay until you get a budget. They don't care. They just don't care.
Yep.
That's the sad part, because it's politics. It's the sad part of it. You
Yep.
know, it's all about who can shine better. I want to make the better impression to people, but who are you affecting? You're affecting our children.
Yep. And our
Their
community.
children are going to the best of the best because they're still getting their paycheck and being able to send them.
Yep. I mean, well, Rep Curry and Rep Boyd have children in public schools, thank goodness. But those are the two I know.
Right. But Barbie, the majority don't.
No, but it's hurting children and communities. The truth is
Mhm.
that, you know, this budget committee said from January that we did not want to raise taxes. The governor came out with a budget that would have helped us and let us not raise taxes, right? The
Mhm.
governor's budget, we don't have to raise taxes with. But now we don't have it, or we don't know what we have. So we gotta, you know, run our business, and it's going to be devastating if we have to lay off teachers. Because they'll be gobbled up instantly. And then when the legislator, I've heard that they'll have a budget by middle of July. Well, that, you know, that you might as well just kick us, right? Because that's 2 weeks too late. Right? But we talk to our young people about hitting deadlines all the time. So yeah, but you know, we're here. Anybody have any questions? All right. Thanks for a quick meeting.
So Jennifer,
Yeah.
on Bob's schedule there, we have another meeting on the 20th.
Well, that is, yes. The 20th, Bob?
Okay. There was the June 20th, the advisory.
Yeah.
The
We're gonna keep
advisory committee?
meeting. Yeah, because I want everyone to know. I want to be as transparent as possible on where we are on this stuff.
Okay. I wanted to make sure I got it on my calendar if it wasn't.
Yeah, no, I
That's why
appreciate that, Mr. I appreciate that. All right. Have a pleasant evening.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank
Take
you.
care.
Good night,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.